We are back with another review, and today we are checking out a little comparison and contrasting of the newest M19 core set release for the Elder Dragons, and we're going to compare those to the original release of the Elder Dragons from Legends. So we're going to check out the cards, compare some of the artwork, compare some of the abilities and some of the mana costs, and just kind of see how these dragons have aged over the past 20 years. So let's check it out. So first we got Vivixis Asmadi, and let's go with the Legends card first. And we got two basically of green, red, and black, and then two colorless. So you're looking at 8 total mana to cast him, and 7/7 flying, and you have an upkeep of one of each of the colors, a splash of each, or you have to bury Vivixis. So you can also pump them up with each color by applying a +1/+0 counter until end of turn. So pretty expensive, pretty hulkly. I remember I used to play a 5 set of these in one of my decks in the 90s, which was great. And then we have the new rendition of Vivixis Asmadi, the Dire. Artwork still kind of, still is a dragon, but I would say this one looks more, still has those little type of flares, I don't know what you'd call them, but still kind of has more of a lizard look, I'd say, in the newer rendition for M19. Now, in this one, the mana cost has been significantly decreased. All the Legends characters had a huge cost with barely any attributes, but we got one of each, a splash of each, and 3 colorless, which, I don't know about you, but you're paying way less mana right now. You're paying at least two less of the actual straight colored mana, and one of those colored mana is getting converted over to a colorless. So you have a little more of a wider range if you don't have, 2 of each of these out to play. But you get a 6/6 instead of a 7/7, and you get flying. But whenever Vivixis Asmadi, the Dire attacks, for each player, choose target permanent deck player controls. Those players sacrifice those permanents. Each player who sacrificed a permanent this way reveals the top card of their library, then puts it onto the battlefield if it's a permanent card. Now, they definitely have changed the complexity of the ability for Vivixis in regards to this just being basically a pump-upable dragon, to scrying and pulling cards and drawing cards. We do have mythic status on here. They are priced about the same in regards to right now, current price as of the post of this video. But yeah, I mean, they definitely have changed they added the Dire, so the name wasn't long enough. They added the Dire to it, and yeah, still a formidable opponent. Obviously, it's evolved in regards to its mana cost, which is great. But Vivixis, pretty good rebirth in regards to the return. So next we have Chromium. So we have straight up Chromium from the Legends set, and we have Chromium Immutable from the M19 core set. So they did keep the color patterns with the dragons all the same, which is great. But let's look at the original Legends one. So for 2 black, 2 blue, and 2 white, and 2 colorless, so 8 total. All the older Elder Dragons cost 8. So you get a 7/7 flying and rampage 2. So instead of pumping up Chromium, you get rampage 2. During your upkeep, you still have to pay one of each of the splashes, or you bury Chromium. Now, for 7 mana, you get a 7/7. So they kept the power and toughness for Chromium at a 7/7, and they just reduced the mana cost by 1 total, and they converted some of the straight mana cost over to colorless, which is really nice as well. So you have more flexibility in regards to launching and releasing Chromium. Chromium has flash, and he can't be countered. He has flying, and you can discard a card until end of turn. Chromium Immutable becomes a human with base power and toughness of 1/1 and loses all abilities and gains hexproof. It can't be blocked this turn. So basically you can discard a card to have Chromium deal 1 damage, which is essentially what that is. So but yeah, definitely a little more complex. Same toughness, flying. The rampage has been replaced by flash, not being able to be countered, the fact it could turn into a human. So a lot of things have been added. The mana cost has been lowered. Power is the same. So pretty sweet. in regards to the new release of them, but definitely looks a little different. But this one looks a little more hulkier. The Legends one, this one looks more like a Pegasus or a horse, and less like a dragon, maybe more like a drake or something. So I do find that interesting that they downplayed the overall size of Chromium from compared to. I mean, look at the castle in the background. I mean, it looks just like a huge metallic 90s chrome dragon. So definitely changed it, made it a little more sleek, but still cool. They added the mutable. Obviously, if the name wasn't long enough, you got the mutable now. So that's Chromium. And next on the list, we got Arcades Sabbath. So we got a green, blue, and a white, 2 of each, with 2 colorless for the Legends version. You get a 7/7 with flying, and as long as they are not attacking, untapped creatures you control get +2 or +0/+2, which basically pumps up other creatures besides just him. During your upkeep, you have to pay a splash of each to keep Arcades Sabbath in play, and you can only pump it up with white, and you can only pump up the life side of it, which is pretty sweet. So far, the abilities of the Legend Dragons, Arcades Sabbath definitely has a really good positive one that actually affects other creatures, which is sweet. That it could disperse basically +2 counters to blocking creatures, which is great. And then the new rendition is actually only 4 mana, and his power has been reduced to a 3/5. And you got 1 splash of each with 1 colorless. So, I mean, you're cutting the mana in half, and you're almost cutting the power in half. But he still has the, it's almost like he has the +2 counter. Like it was a 3/3 with the +2 counter. But he has Flying Vigilance. Whenever a defender enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Each creature you control with Defender assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power, and can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So Arcades the Strategist, super cool that they added these powers, but I'm glad that they kind of kept it almost equal in regards to its abilities to distribute power and abilities to other characters, not just his card in play. So I'm glad they kept that, but definitely a little bit more like a Drakey type of small, slender type dragon, not so much like the big hulking Arcades that you see here. And the color's been changed a little bit, just a little bit different in the artwork. It's definitely been modernized. I mean, talking 20 years difference. So this is from 95 Legends came out, so you're talking over 20 years. So, but yeah, pretty sweet. I like the fact that they lowered the mana cost a lot on Arcades. So we got 2 left. Let's see who we have next. So we got Palladium Moors, which in the most recent lore has been revealed that it's been a sister of Nicol Bolas. So the original one, obviously, we got 8 mana. We got green, red, and white with two colorless, so a splash of each of those 3 will allow you to keep Palladium Moors in play during your upkeep. And she's got flying and trample, and she's a 7/7 with those curly horns and those devil wings. And then now we got a 6/6 Palladium Moors, the Ruiner. So we added the Ruiner to her title, and now you have 6 mana for a 6/6, so she's been downgraded in power by 1 on each side. She's got Flying, Vigilance, and Trample. Palladium Moors, the Ruiner, has hexproof if it hasn't dealt damage yet. So basically, if you're just using her as a blocker, or just have her in play, you don't have to worry about someone getting rid of her until you actually attack with her, which is really great. To allow you to stage your offense against your opponent. So, but in regards to the abilities, that the original Legend version of Palladium Moors, she actually had the least abilities out of all of them, because she just has Flying and Trample. So she shouldn't have any pump up abilities, no distribution abilities to other characters. So pretty much the most plain one out of all the Elder Dragons in the original Legends. And now you have almost one of the most comparable, powerful ones out of the entire 5 set that was released. You got Flying, Vigilance, and Trample, and it has hexproof if it hasn't dealt damage yet, and it's 6/6 for 6 mana. That's a lot of beef for 6 mana. So they definitely have upgraded Palladium Morris for sure. Now let's check out the last one, the one everyone's been waiting for. We got Nicol Bolas. So, the original card, 8 mana. You got red, black, and blue, and 2 colorless. 7/7 gets you. Look at that. Look at that artwork for the original Nicol Bolas, just chilling, reading books. Flying. Whenever Nicol Bolas deals damage to an opponent, that opponent discards his or her entire hand. Ignore this ability if that opponent has no cards left in their hand. You got to play a splash of each to keep Bolas in play. So that's really awesome, because back in the day it was a thing to have a card that, or creatures that had flying, because a lot of people didn't play flying creatures. So whenever you had a flying creature, you pretty much would just deal instant damage. And when you have something like Bolas out in play and you just dealt damage, and you have your opponent discarding the whole hand, that's just epic. So Bolas was definitely a card I played when I used to play my Elder Dragons. I used to love playing Bolas, because you used to just literally, all those cards that your opponent has that they're waiting to drop are now gone. So Bolas definitely had the most powerful out of the 5 Elder Dragons abilities, because you're literally discarding someone's hand. Pumping up creatures is great, but when you can get rid of someone's entire hand, their whole strategy needs to be revamped, and basically throws their whole strategy for a loop. So that's awesome ability. For a Legends card, for the amount that you pay, you're paying 8 mana for a 7/7 flying, that whenever it deals damage, your opponent discards their hand. That's sick. So let's check out the new version. New version's only 4 mana, so the mana's been severely cut in half. Life hasn't been cut in half. We got a 4/4 flying Elder Dragon. When Bolas enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, so I get an automatic discard just for him coming into play. And then you could play the Mist mana, which is 7 more, to equate out and transform him over to Nicol Bolas the Arisen. So once you get the Planeswalker Bolas in play, you get a 7 loyalty Planeswalker, add 2 loyalty, draw 2 cards. You can -3 loyalty, and Nicol Bolas the Arisen does 10 damage to target creature or Planeswalker. So basically, by the time you can successfully launch Bolas the Arisen, your opponent hopefully should be within 1 or 2 striking distances of this. So whether they've gained life beyond 20, or not your opponent, your creatures. So you basically can take out any one of their Planeswalkers that you have as an adversary. You could basically, whether they pumped up the Planeswalker with loyalty, you can pretty much 1/2 them with this right off the bat, because you get 2 swipes with it to deal 10 damage to any target creature or Planeswalker. So next ability, you can -4 loyalty and put target creature or Planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Now that is awesome, especially if you can do one swipe with this, and then return your opponent's Planeswalker to your playfield. That would be, I mean, it's game changing almost in regards to some of the abilities that this Bolas Planeswalker has. If not, probably one of the best Planeswalkers abilities that I've seen is this lineup right here. -12, exile all but the bottom card of target player's library. I mean, that is extremely detrimental. And you're talking about, starts with 7, so you pump up Bolas by drawing 2 cards. You're talking 3 turns of drawing cards. Exile all but the bottom card of your target player's library. You have 1 loyalty point left with Bolas, and your opponent is left with everything but the bottom card of their library. So it's pretty much a game ender right there. Just waiting and just pumping him up 3 turns with this draw 2 cards. So this is definitely it's definitely gotten a lot better in regards to their re-release of these Elder Dragons. I mean, especially Palladium Morris and Nicol Bolas. Before Nicol Bolas is transformed, they both look like Ganon from Zelda Breath of the Wild. I don't know if you've noticed that. Like, all the other Elder Dragons don't look anything like these, but the curved horns, the very Aurora flame coming out, they definitely look like Ganon for sure. But then when you got Nicol Bolas the Arisen, it doesn't look like Ganon. So just in his pre-transformed form, they both look like Ganon for sure. If anyone plays Breath of the Wild and agrees, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, super awesome card. This was a good pull that I got out of the M19 set, so I'm glad I got this one. This is one of the only Planeswalkers I actually wanted. All the other ones I could have cared less about. Sarkhan would have been cool to pull, but I got Bolas. That's all that matters. It's the only one that I wanted out of the whole set, and I wanted to get one of each of the 5 Elder Dragons, which I ended up pulling those 2, so that's why I made this video for you guys. But just wanted to compare some of the older, 23-year-old Elder Dragons to some of the newer ones, and my have they changed. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you remember playing with the Legends Elder Dragons, how difficult was it for you to get one of these out in the field with the mana cost that they had? Let us know in the comments below. If you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel. We do Magic videos every Tuesday, so be on the lookout for that. Have a great rest of your day.